Alright, so the audio is still not the best one, but I'll do my best on this. So here's what we need to learn about um, the square root of smaller numbers or irrational numbers, and how do we actually do it by hand. Here's what I mean when I say do it by hand. I actually mean calculating the square root. So let's do the one for 2. There's a few similarities between the division and the square root, but for the square root it's a little different. So we still have to add a decimal to it, but we don't do it inside the radical. We're going to do it outside of it. We're going to go this far and then just do it that way. The answer will go in this location right here. I wrote a line. And here's what we do. We have to find a number that when you multiply by itself, it gives you 2 or close to 2. But it cannot go above that. So the other number is 1. We're going to put that on top. 1 times 1 equals 2. I'm sorry, it does not equal 2. I was thinking. Equals 1. So we put 1 right here, and then we break down 1 right here, and we subtract it, we get 1. Another difference between the division and this one is that instead of adding 0, we add 2 at a time. We always add 2 at a time. And we bring both down at the same time. So we end up with 100. Now here's the next part of that can be a little tricky. The number up here needs to be multiplied by 2 every single time. So 1 times 2 is 2. And we bring that right here. That's the first part. The second part is finding a number that when you multiply, add it to 2 and multiply it by itself, it gives you a number close to 100. So this is what I'm talking about. You have to find a number that you have to add right here. So 1 times 1. But it's not 1 times 1, it's 21 times 1. That gives me 21, so I can't use that. And then now I'm going to use 2. So 2 times 2, which really is 22 times 2. That's 44. That is still not close to 100. So I'm going to keep going until I find one that is close to it. So that'll be 23 times 3. And that's about 69. That's closer, but it's not as close as yet. So let's try 24 times 4. Well, 24 times 4, that gives me about 96. I think that's pretty close. So 96. We're going to use that. So this number, we're going to put it on top right here. And remember that once you do that, it's like adding a decimal right there after the 2. That means on our answer, we have to add a decimal 2 right there before we move on to the next one. So we're going to use that. So we bring up the 4 and we put it up here. Now we have 96. And we get 4, 0, 0. And again, we still have a little more to go. So we're going to add 2 more zeros and bring it down at the same time. And we end up with 400. Now, on the top, we still do the same thing. Before we move on, we have to multiply the entire thing by 2. Not only 4, but 14. So 14 times 2, that's 28, I believe. So we get 28. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 2 times 1 is 2. So we're going to do exactly the same thing we did with the 24. You're going to start with 1. So we do 281 times 1, that gives me 281, which is not bad. It's still under 400. The next one is 282 times 2. That's over 500, which actually is over 402, and that won't work. So we're going to use this one instead. 281. Then we're going to bring that 1 and put it over here, because that's the one that we're using. Just like we used the 4 and we used the 1 at the beginning. So we're going to put that over here, 281. And we're going to subtract. We get 9. Carry 1. We get get 1 right here, and we get 1 right here. 9, 1, 2, yeah, that should be it. So we're not done again. We're going to add another set of zeros and bring them down. Now we have 11,900. And we can do again the same thing. We're going to multiply the entire thing up here by 2. So we're going to multiply 141 times 2. That is 282, I hope. Let's try. 282. All right, so I got this started here. But moving going back to where I was, you do have to multiply that 141 times 2, that gives you 282. And then we have to find a number again that whenever we multiply it by 1 to whatever, it gets us close to 11,000. So another thing is to understand that if you're talking about 2,000, whether you put 1 over here, 2, 3, or 4, whatever, you're still talking about 2,000 times whatever number. So a good way to approximate would be by doing, it's actually almost 3,000. So it would be about 3,000 times 2. That's about 6,000. 3,000 times 3, that's about 9,000. 2,000 times 4, that's 12,000, which goes well above 1190. But 11,900. But let's try 4. See if that works. So 2,824 times 4, and let's see what that gives us. Right here, just to do it here. Actually, I'm just going to do. Oh no. 2,824 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 8 and 1, 9. 4 times 8 is 32. 2, 3. 4 times 2 is 8, and 3, 9, 10, 11. So if you notice, you went, it's right below it. 11,296. That's actually pretty close to it. It didn't entirely go above, so that's good. All right. So we're going to put this right here. We get 11,296. Just to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, let me verify here. Sometimes I kind of go low. So let's say 2, 8. Is that 2, 8, 2, 4 times 4, 11,296. That's correct. Alright, going back to this. And we get factor 4 to 1, 0, 1, 6, 0. So we get approximately, well, we get exactly 604. And then we could keep going and add more zeros, but we don't need to. Let's bring that 4 up here before we forget. So we can say that the square root of 2 is close to 1.414 blah blah blah, which is pretty close, a pretty close approximation. You can do this basically with any number as long as you remember the rules. So you're going to go bring down 2 numbers at a time, add a decimal, and make sure you add a decimal in the answer as well. And about this little stuff right here, it's very important because if you forget that you have to multiply by 2 on top each time, you will not get the answer right. Also, about this process right here, how that affects the entire calculation. If you get lost, if you don't know those things, you won't be able to get the correct answer. So it's important that you do all of these steps. I'm going to go ahead and do another one very quickly to see if you guys get it. All right, so we're going to move on and do the next one that we did in class, which was 7. Finding the square root of 7. Again, leave plenty of space, just so you know that you're adding a bunch of zeros, so you need a lot of space for that. And put your little line right here to remind you that's where your answer goes. Again, you are going to see what number is close to 7 when you multiply it by itself, but it doesn't go above 7. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9. We have to use 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. So we're going to put this number right here on top because that's what we're using. To multiply times itself, it gives me 4. So when it comes down here and subtract it, you get 3. You add a decimal here, that means you have to add a decimal right here as well. It's just like the division kind of, and then you add 2 zeros instead of 1 and bring them down. So you end up with 300 instead. So again, the numbers on top, do not forget that you're actually multiplying by 2 and then bringing them down to under here. So 2 times 2 is 4, you put 4 right here. And then again with the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s, 41 times 1, 42 times 2, 43 times 3. I will start with 45 times 5. So I get 45 times 5, 25, carry 2, 4, that'd be 20, and 2, that's 22. Is that right? Yeah. That's still not, well, it's pretty close to 300, but not as close. So let's try to do 46 times, see what that is. 46 times 6, 636, carry 3, 4 times 4 is 24, and 3 is 27. That's close to it, but not quite. So let's try 47 and see that. 47 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49, 9 times 4. 7 times 4 is 28, and 4 is a lot more than 300. So I'm going to go back and use the one that I had previously, which is 6. So we're going to use 6 instead because it gives me a number that is below 300, and it's pretty close to 300, but it's go above. So 46 times 6 gives me 272. And again, I have to bring that number up. The one that I'm using, put it up here. That's going to be my answer. So then I have to bring this right here. Where's the blue one? Oh. And put 276 subtracted, I get 4. It'll be A2 and then 0. 24. I have to add those zeros and bring them down as well because that's just how it works. So now you have 2400. Again, before I can do anything with that 2400, I have to double the number up here. 26 times 2. That'll be 52. That's 52. And now I have to find a number that you can add to that number and multiply it by it to keep it close to 2400. So I would say, if it's close to 500, I would try 4. 500 times 4 is 20. I cannot go above that. So let's try that. 524 times 4. That's 16, carry 1, 8, 1, 9, that's 20. That'll be the closest one because if I use 5, it would be 2500 at least. So it will go above the number that I need. So I'm going to put 4 times 4, and that gives me this number, which is 2096. Again, do not forget to add this number to the top because that's part of your answer. So we get 4, and 1, 0, here 1, 3, and that. And then we can add more zeros and bring them down. Sorry, the colors are kind of crazy. But 0, 9, 6, and And now we have to double the number on top again. Times 2. So 264 times 2, that's 528, I believe. 528. That'll be 8, it's 2, yeah, 128. And we're also talking about, sorry, the numbers are just crazy. 30,000 now. So if we have 5,000 at least, we're trying to get to 30,000. 5,000 times 5 is 25,000. 5,000 times 6, that's 30,000, but it goes above that. So I'm going to use 5,000 times 5 and see how close it gets me to 30,000. So 5,285 times 5, that's what I give you. That's 5 times 5 is 25, carry 2. That's 40 and 2, is 42, carry 4. That's 10 and 4 is 14, carry 1. 25 is 26. So I think that's pretty close to it. If I add 5,000 more, it'll put me at least at 31,000. That's too much. So I'm going to use 5 times 5. And it gives me this number right here, which is 26,425. I don't have to bother with that. All I have to do is remember that I used a 5 and bring it up, and that's it. The closest approximation that I can get to the square root of 7 would be exactly this right here. And that's a pretty close approximation. Doing it this way, instead of trying to go and estimate and go over one number and the other number, it's a lot of calculations because you're doing a division type of system right here, but you're also doing a bunch of other stuff on this side by adding, multiplying by 2, and then on this side, whenever you are adding numbers and multiplying them at the same time, it can be confusing, especially this situation right here, because you're not just adding numbers, you're literally adding a number and then multiplying it by the number you're using. So give it a shot, and I'll give you one number and see if you can figure it out. So let's see if you can find the square root of 5. It's a pretty easy number, but let's see if you can figure that one out. And bring it tomorrow to class, and we'll go over to class very quickly. I hope you enjoyed it.